room is quiet when this story begins. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that hums, the kind that makes you aware of your own breathing. Somewhere, far back in history, a man is writing by candlelight. Ink scratches across paper slowly, deliberately, as if every word carries weight. Niccolo Machiavelli is not writing for heroes. He is not writing for saints. He is writing for those who want to survive reality as it is, not as it should be. And centuries later, whether we like it or not, his thinking still bleeds into boardrooms, politics, relationships, and the silent power games played every single day. If you've ever felt outmaneuvered, emotionally cornered, or quietly controlled without knowing exactly how it happened, this story is for you. Not to turn you into a villain, but to make you aware, because the most dangerous tricks are not the loud ones. They are subtle, they are invisible, and they work best on good people who believe everyone plays fair. Machiavelli understood something uncomfortable about human nature. He understood that people respond more to perception than truth, more to emotion than logic, and more to fear of loss than hope of gain. He wasn't celebrating cruelty, he was exposing reality. And once you see that reality clearly, you can no longer unsee it. The first dark psychological trick begins not with dominance, but with distance. Machiavelli observed that familiarity breeds not loyalty, but contempt. When you are always available, always agreeable, always present, your value quietly decreases. Humans are wired to respect what they can't fully access. Think about it. The person who answers instantly, who explains too much, who tries too hard to be liked, rarely holds power in a room. Power comes from restraint, from the ability to pause, from silence that feels intentional, not awkward. When you step back slightly, when you allow space to exist, people fill that space with their own projections. They wonder what you're thinking. They sense depth. They assume importance. This isn't manipulation in the cartoon villain sense. It's psychological gravity. Machiavelli knew that absence creates curiosity, and curiosity creates leverage. Not because you're playing games, but because you're no longer handing yourself over freely. The world values what feels earned. And here's the uncomfortable truth. People don't miss you when you're always there. They miss you when you're gone. The second trick is even darker because it hides behind kindness. Machiavelli believed that people are not moved by generosity alone. They are moved by contrast. If you are kind all the time, kindness becomes invisible. But when kindness follows firmness, it feels powerful. This is why unpredictable warmth creates loyalty faster than constant affection. Not cruelty, not abuse, but controlled emotional contrast. Have you ever noticed how deeply people remember the one moment someone forgave them when they expected punishment, or the one time someone showed mercy when it wasn't required? That moment lingers. It binds. Machiavelli understood that emotions imprint most strongly when expectations are broken. When you are capable of saying no, your yes carries weight. When you are capable of walking away, your staying feels chosen. This is not about being cold. It's about being selective, about understanding that emotional availability is a resource, and resources create value only when they are finite. The third trick is perception over truth. Machiavelli was brutally honest about this. People judge with their eyes, not their minds. They believe what appears consistent, confident, and socially validated. Truth on its own is fragile. Perception is armor. This is why confidence often outperforms competence, why certainty sounds smarter than hesitation, and why those who control the narrative often control reality. If you hesitate publicly, people assume weakness. If you explain yourself excessively, people assume guilt. If you project calm authority, people assume control, even if internally you're still figuring things out. Machiavelli wasn't saying to lie recklessly. He was saying that how you present truth matters more than truth alone. Reality is filtered through human bias, and ignoring that bias doesn't make you noble. It makes you vulnerable. This is why powerful figures rarely reveal everything. Not because they are hiding evil, but because mystery protects influence. When people know too much, they stop imagining. And imagination is where power quietly lives. The fourth trick cuts even deeper because it challenges morality itself. Machiavelli believed that being loved is fragile, but being respected lasts longer. Love can fade. Respect resists decay. Fear, when controlled, is more reliable than affection when unmanaged. This doesn't mean terror. It means consequence. When people know there are boundaries they cannot cross without cost, behavior changes. When they believe there will always be forgiveness, lines are pushed. This is why leaders who never enforce boundaries lose authority, and why people who tolerate disrespect invite more of it. Machiavelli understood that kindness without strength is not virtue, it is exposure. The goal is never to intimidate. The goal is to be taken seriously, to exist as someone whose limits matter. When people know you can withdraw access, attention, or opportunity, they treat you differently. Not because they fear you as a monster, but because they respect you as a force. And finally, the fifth trick, the most dangerous one because it happens quietly, almost invisibly. Control the frame, not the argument. Machiavelli knew that winning debates doesn't win power. Defining the context does. Whoever sets the rules of the conversation decides what matters and what doesn't. This is why skilled manipulators don't fight every accusation. They shift the focus. They redefine the problem. They ask different questions. If someone forces you to defend yourself constantly, you are already losing. Defense accepts their frame. Power comes from choosing what deserves a response and what doesn't. Silence can be more dominant than explanation. Walking away can speak louder than justification. Machiavelli understood that energy is currency. Wherever you invest it, you empower. These 5 tricks were never meant to turn you into something inhuman. They were meant to wake you up, to show you that the world does not run on fairness alone, but on perception, boundaries, and emotional intelligence sharpened by realism. You don't have to use these tools to harm, but you must understand them because others already do. And once you see the game clearly, you stop being a pawn. You stop over-explaining. You stop chasing approval. You stop confusing kindness with weakness. You begin to move differently, speak differently. Choose silence where you once begged to be heard. Choose distance where you once clung. Choose restraint where you once overgave. Machiavelli wasn't asking you to abandon your humanity. He was asking you to protect it in a world that doesn't play fair. And the moment you truly understand that, something shifts inside you, not into darkness, but into clarity. A calm, grounded awareness that power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply stands still and lets the world adjust around it. The shift that happens after that realization is subtle at first. It doesn't arrive like lightning or revelation. It arrives quietly, like a door closing somewhere behind you, sealing off an older version of yourself who believed that effort alone was enough, that honesty was always rewarded, that goodness guaranteed safety. Machiavelli understood that most people don't lose power because they are weak, but because they are predictable. Predictability is comforting, but it is also exploitable. When people can map your reactions, they can control outcomes without ever touching you. This is where awareness becomes armor. You begin to notice patterns you once ignored. How certain people only respect you when you are willing to walk away. How others listen more carefully when you speak less. How emotional restraint unsettles those who once fed on your reactions. Machiavelli knew that emotional discipline is one of the highest forms of power because emotions are the easiest entry point for manipulation. Anger makes you reckless. Guilt makes you obedient. Hope makes you blind. The one who controls their inner state cannot be easily controlled from the outside. There is a moment, often uncomfortable, when you realize that many relationships were sustained not by mutual respect, but by your willingness to overextend. When you stop doing that, some people drift away, not because you changed for the worse, but because the leverage disappeared. Machiavelli would say, "This is not loss. This is filtration." Power does not grow in crowded spaces filled with dependency. It grows in clarity, in clean lines, in knowing exactly where you stand and who stands with you when there is no excess to take. Another truth Machiavelli never softened is that people follow strength more readily than virtue. Not loud strength, not aggression, but grounded certainty. The person who does not rush to defend themselves. The person who does not crumble under accusation. The person who does not need to prove their worth because they have already decided it internally. This internal decision is what changes posture, tone, timing. It's why some individuals command attention without raising their voice, while others shout and are still ignored. As you move deeper into this understanding, you begin to recognize that power is less about domination and more about positioning. Where you place yourself emotionally, socially, and psychologically determines how others respond to you. Machiavelli observed that those who rush to be seen often become background noise, while those who choose when to appear create impact. This is why scarcity, when authentic, increases value. Not fake unavailability, but real self-prioritization. The kind that says, Without words, my time and energy are not unlimited. And here is where many misunderstand Machiavelli. They think he is teaching manipulation for manipulation's sake. But what he is really revealing is the mechanics of human behavior. A machine does not become evil because you understand how it works. It becomes dangerous only when you pretend it doesn't exist. Power games are already being played around you. Understanding them does not make you cruel. It makes you conscious. There is a quiet confidence that emerges when you stop trying to control outcomes and start controlling your responses. When you realize that you don't need to win every interaction to maintain power. Sometimes the strongest move is to let someone expose themselves through their own excess. Machiavelli knew that people reveal their intentions when given enough rope. Silence invites projection. Patience invites error. The impulsive always betray themselves eventually. At this stage, your presence changes. You speak with intention. You listen more than you reveal. You allow others to underestimate you if it serves the long game, because Machiavelli was always thinking long-term. Immediate victory is seductive, but it often creates future enemies. Subtle positioning creates lasting advantage. The goal is not to crush others, but to remain standing when alliances shift, when tides turn, when masks fall, and they always do. What makes these principles uncomfortable is that they force you to confront a reality where fairness is not guaranteed, where good intentions do not shield you from exploitation, where moral purity without awareness becomes a liability. Machiavelli never asked you to abandon ethics. He asked you to stop being naive, to recognize that survival in complex systems requires more than virtue. It requires intelligence sharpened by realism. There comes a point when you no longer feel the need to announce your boundaries. You enforce them quietly. When you no longer chase validation because you understand how fleeting it is. When praise stops intoxicating you and criticism stops defining you. This emotional independence is deeply unsettling to those who rely on influence through approval or shame. They sense the loss of control even if they can't articulate it. This is where true freedom begins. Not freedom from responsibility, but freedom from manipulation. Freedom from emotional hijacking. Freedom from needing to be understood by everyone. Machiavelli knew that those who are truly powerful are often misunderstood because they do not perform for applause. They move according to internal compass, not external noise. And perhaps the most profound realization of all is this: power does not corrupt everyone. It reveals. It reveals who can hold responsibility without cruelty, who can set boundaries without hatred, who can understand human darkness without becoming consumed by it. The danger was never knowledge. The danger was unconsciousness. When you integrate these lessons, you don't become colder. You become clearer. You don't lose empathy. You gain discernment. You stop offering your softness to those who weaponize it, and you reserve it for those who respect it. Machiavelli would say that this is not cynicism. This is maturity. The candlelight in that distant room eventually burns low. The ink dries. The words survive centuries, not because they are comforting, but because they are true. And now those truths sit with you, not as instructions to manipulate, but as lenses through which to see the world as it is. Once you see clearly, you move differently. And when you move differently, the world responds, not with fairness, but with respect.